Okay, technically, we are well past the mid-season mark, but over half the players are still in the house, so hopefully this isn't too late for you all. Big Brother 26 has been an incredible season to watch, and the main reason for that is because of how fluid and spontaneous these players are each and every week. They have no fear of flipping the game on its head and making a huge move. The problem is that it makes it extremely difficult for me to rank these players because things are always changing. So take these rankings as a loose ordering for how likely I think it is for each of these players to end up winning. Consider subscribing if you aren't already. You all have been crushing it lately, and I am super grateful for it. And without further ado, here is my Big Brother 26 midseason player ranking.
To be a good Big Brother player, you have to be able to bounce back from difficult situations, and to be a great Big Brother player, you have to be able to avoid those situations.
So, let's talk business for a second. These videos take time to make. Because of that, I cannot be 100% updated when it comes to what I'm saying here. I tried to wait as long as possible to write this script to at least try and have some semblance of accuracy, but I'm not going to have Thursday morning information at my disposal. So, just to let all of you know, I am writing this on Tuesday afternoon, immediately after listening to Taryn's morning update. It's entirely possible that things have completely shaken up since then, so please bear with me if that's the case. As it stands, we have Quinn and Kimo on the block, and the vote is not fully locked in. Because of that, that means that there is a chance for either of them to be evicted tonight, so I feel the right thing for me to do is to put them at the bottom spots of the list, but I'll also tell you where I would put them in the event that they do survive. Since Quinn seems to be the most likely evictee, I'm gonna put him at the number 9 spot. Quinn has had a pretty bumpy road throughout the season, whereas 2 HOH reigns have had really devastating outcomes for him, and he's also viewed as a pretty big competitive threat in the house. He was just semi-blindsided and put on the block at the veto meeting, and while he does seemingly have Leah and Angela's votes to stay, he needs Chelsie to be convinced to keep him in order for him to stick around. It's not impossible, I just don't know if Quinn recognizes exactly what he needs to say to Chelsie in order to convince her to keep him. If he manages to get the numbers to stay, then I'd move Quinn up quite a few spots, possibly up to like number 4, because it seems that the two trios in the house are finally about to go after one another, which could help Quinn avoid the warfare for the next couple of weeks. And if he does survive this week, I think he becomes a legitimate jury threat if he's sitting in the final 2. But as it currently stands, he's probably getting voted out tonight, so he's at the number 9 spot.
Second HOH, second time one of my final 2s got sent home. Seeing 2 of my HOHs be unsuccessful really stinks.
At the number 8 spot, we have the other option to be evicted, and that's Kimo. While I do think that it's more likely for Kimo to stay, I don't have nearly as much faith in him being able to win the game, because there's a good chance he's just going to go right back up on the block next week if his trio doesn't win the HOH. Kimo's passivity in the game should be helping him look like a non-threat, but because it's so openly known that he's in a trio with Rubina and Tikor, he's still being targeted because of them having the numbers. So he's not even getting the benefit of being a non-factor. Also, even if he does survive and he makes it to the final 3 with his trio, he most certainly loses to Tikor, and he might even lose to Rubina. There's still a lot of game left to be played though, and that means there's a lot of time for Kimo to change his narrative and build up a resume. So, because of the fact that he's more likely to survive tonight over Quinn, and because he has 2 really solid allies in Tikor and Rubina, Kimo escapes being placed at the bottom, and he's at number 8 instead.
I'm so proud I survived the vote. The fact that I survived by a 4-3 vote, like, I'm still gagged.
When I started this list, I had this player at the bottom spot, and it wasn't really that close. But some things happened, and Angela managed to move up to the number 7 spot. Angela just broke a Big Brother record this week by becoming the first player ever to have the veto used on them 3 times in a single season by people other than herself. And that's insane. Even though she wasn't really responsible for the move happening, she was the catalyst that started the train of thinking that resulted in her getting taken off the block, and she deserves some credit for stirring the pot. Although I still have a really hard time seeing a path for her to win, I do think a road to the endgame has finally opened up to her. We're at the point where the bigger players in the game are gonna have to start taking direct shots at one another, and Angela should be able to avoid the crossfire and potentially even be picked up as a number. The most important thing that she needs to do is not shoot herself in the foot, and if she can manage to do that, I can see her making it deep. She also still somehow has her bond with Leah, so since she's probably making it far and has an ally, she lands at the number 7 spot.
Chelsie tells me I'm the Taylor Hale of the season. Okay, Chelsie, I'll be the Taylor Hale of the season. I'll be laughing all the way to the bank when I cash that $750,000 check. Those are good.
At the number 6 spot, I have Rubina, who I currently see in a very similar light to Kimo, except she's not in immediate danger of going home. She has Kimo and Tikor very loyal to her, and having 2 strong allies with only 9 people left is something to be commended. However, just like Kimo, if this trio does make it to the final 3, she's not likely to beat Tikor in the final 2, and I don't know if she beats Kimo either. Which, we don't even know if that's a possibility because Kimo still could be evicted tonight, and that would suck for her. The way I see it, a war is going to start between Rubina's trio and the Chelsie, Cam, Makensy trio. And in my eyes, Rubina's trio is much more likely to lose, both in a positional and physical sense. However, and this is a very weird thing to say, I actually see some Angela upside with Rubina, where it's possible that if Kimo gets evicted, Rubina's threat level decreases tremendously, and the crosshairs might move off of her and onto bigger targets in the game. Although I don't think it's super likely that Rubina is going to end up being the winner, there's a lot of game left to be played, and all it takes is one HOH and one big move to put her right back in the conversation for becoming the winner. Up next, we have a player that I genuinely had risen on a lot recently, but she faced quite a setback this week. So at the number 5 spot, I have Leah. Leah dodged a major bullet by not being the renom this week, but Quinn being the renom was the next worst thing for her game. If Leah loses Quinn, that would be a pretty big hit to her, because that's not just someone she has a final 2 with, but that someone is going to fight tooth and nail to protect her in the game, and that's super valuable to have at this point. For what it's worth though, Leah is putting in the work to save Quinn. She seemingly got Angela on board to keep him, and she's putting in the work with Makensy too, and it's kinda working? I don't know. Like I said, there's still so much up in the air. While I used to really question Leah's chances of winning if she was in the final 2, she's now been more active in making moves, and she currently has plans to make a massive move next week if she's able to win the HOH by putting up Tikor and Chelsie. That will earn her some game respect, but it'll also put a huge target on her own back that she'll have to manage. Oh, also, it would be quite remiss of me to not mention the fact that Leah still hasn't touched the block yet. There may have been a couple of close calls, but she has avoided nomination, and that's impressive. Leah, in general, is just a big question mark for me. There's a chance she's out the door next week, but there's also a chance that she can make it to the end of the game. So for that reason, I have her right in the middle at the number 5 spot.
You guys will see that this benefits all of us.
You are a super villain.
I don't want to say that they're wrapped around my finger, but...
So far, we have gone over Kimo, Rubina, and Quinn, 3 players who have underdog stories if they're sitting in the end. But the player with the true underdog story is Makensy, and I have her at the number 4 spot. Makensy is in a solid trio with Cam and Chelsie, and if it wasn't clear before, this is the trio that I see surviving the trio wars. However, if the other trio wins power, I think it's pretty likely that Makensy gets put on the block, and she's probably the target. Even still, Makensy has a ton of upside. She has the most comp wins with 4. She's got some pretty good connections with both Leah and Quinn if she chooses to keep him, and I do think she has a killer story if she's sitting in the final 2. I don't think she beats Chelsie, but I do think she beats Cam, and as far as final 2 combinations go, that one looks like one of the more likely ones. I do think she will be targeted by someone at some point in the endgame, but she's been targeted many times before and has survived each time, so who's to say that it won't happen again? She'll have 1 or 2 more battles in her future, but if she can come out on top, she is a very likely winner.
So I was going to send Kimo home, but then Kimo gave his speech. I sadly vote to evict Joseph.
At the number 3 spot, I have someone who I look at very similarly to Makensy, and that's the dog father himself, Cam. Although I personally think Makensy has a better chance of winning in the final 2 than Cam does, I think Cam is more likely to actually make it there. For as in shape as he is surprisingly not being targeted as a physical threat. Now, that might have something to do with the fact that he hasn't really performed that well in comps, but in a way, that's probably been a good thing for him since it's keeping a bigger target away from landing on his back. Cam has both the build and the trajectory to be one of those players that turns the Jets on hard at the final 6 and dominates the end stretch of the game. But I do need to see a little bit more from him before I feel confident in that being a legitimate path for him. While I do think it's likely that his trio will reign supreme in the house, I doubt they'll win every HOH left, and if he finds himself on the block come eviction night, I'd be surprised if the other players didn't at least consider taking him out. Overall though, I'd say the odds are in his favor to make it deep, and although he probably doesn't beat Chelsie or MJ in the final 2, he still has plenty of time to make 1 or 2 big plays to build up some win equity, and I feel that the number 3 spot is a good place for him.
Math is not my strong suit at all. I'm just doing 60 times 60. Is it 2 zeros or is it 3?
Answers, please.
Shout out my dogs to the crib.
Even though I think this player's position has gone down this week, I still see her as one of the best positioned players in the house and one of the most likely winners. So at the number 2 spot, I have T-Core. She has both Kimo and Rubina fully loyal to her, and even though it's pretty clear to everyone that she is the head of this trio, it seems like both Kimo and Rubina will be targeted before her, and that's very impressive by T-Core. She has bonds with Cam and Chelsie that should keep her out of the line of fire, even when the trio wars begin. She has absurd win equity if she's in the final 2, and she is shown to be extremely capable of making big moves in the game that can push her forward. However, if she loses Kimo this week, that is a huge knock to her game. And it also seems that if Leah or Angela win the HOH next week, they're gonna put T-Core on the block next to Chelsie. And that'll be a battle to see who survives that eviction. To combat that though, T-Core is putting in the work necessary to try and ensure that Kimo stays this week, which should help her in the event that she's on the block. And oh yeah, I haven't mentioned that T-Core still hasn't been nominated. I think T-Core is a surefire winner if she's sitting in the final 2, next to anyone except maybe the person in the number 1 spot, but even then, it could go 4-3 in her favor. Overall, if she can keep Kimo in the house, then that crown is looking more and more likely for her. But if she loses her grasp on the others and Kimo gets evicted, then her position on this list might fall a couple spots.
I'm sick of these pencils. Of course I'm feeling for Chelsie, but if Cam is doing things that is kind of pushing Chelsie away, maybe I can use this to my advantage a bit.
And now, at the number 1 spot, the player I feel is definitively the player to beat is Chelsie. In my eyes, Chelsie has the most influence in the game. She's the head of her trio, while also having connections with the other trio. And even though she just put up Quinn, I genuinely think that she could salvage some of that relationship if she chooses to keep him. When it comes to her resume, she has orchestrated a number of moves this season. She'll probably continue to orchestrate more. She has showcased an incredible ability to remain calm and convincing when things are flipped against her, like when Tucker tried to backdoor her. She already has 2 HOHs under her belt, and in my opinion, she beats every player left in the game in the final 2, except for maybe T-Core, but even then, like I said, it could go 4-3 in her favor. The biggest thing going against Chelsie right now is the fact that people are starting to recognize how dangerous she is in the game. I don't think that's having as much of an effect on the people she's already aligned with, but Leah is seemingly gunning for her, and that's something to watch out for. However, Chelsie has two of the best competitors as her two main allies, and that should tip the scales in her favor to help her make it to the end of the game. Next week will be very decisive in determining how likely it is that Chelsie actually makes it to the very, very end. But as it stands now, I think Chelsie is the best player in the house, and she lands at the number 1 spot.
Congratulations, Chelsie!
I mean, can we say number 2, baby? Listen, Auntie Julie, I vote to evict Tucker. Finally, baby, got him out.
And there we go. As I mentioned earlier, this was very hard for me to make because these players flip-flop every hour, every day, and I don't even know who's going to get evicted this week. Hopefully, something didn't happen that completely ruined everything I just talked about, but who knows with these players. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, consider subscribing. I, of course, need to give that extra special shout out to all of my YouTube members and patrons who I would have the hardest time ranking because I would want to put them all in the number 1 spot. And, as always, here's a clip for you on your way out.
No, I don't like that. Ah, take our wives, you wipe it on me.
What pooped on me? I'm so disgusted.